Hi, well, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed catching up with each other. That's a big part of this is our relationships, our learning from each other. So keep that going. Hope you enjoyed lunch. I'm delighted to kick off our second plenary. But before we do that, another little practice with turning point. Okay, so your next question is: do you agree with this statement? This statement, that's not Yorkshire. My institution sees itself as a critical stakeholder in driving my city, town, village to be healthier and sustainable. How much do you agree with that? To what degree do you agree that you're a critical stakeholder? Or your institution sees itself as that? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And our survey says... Woo! Well, that's just as well, isn't it? Because we are. Great. Okay, without any further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Mike Barry on a challenging journey driving change for tomorrow's leaders. Mike is part of the team that in 2007 developed and delivered Marks & Spencer's groundbreaking Plan A. Heard of that? Yeah. It's good. It's going well so far. I'm going to be friendly. A 5-year plan to address a wide range of environmental and social issues. He's responsible for delivering M&S's aspiration to be the world's most sustainable retailer. His job is to work with the M&S leadership team to integrate sustainability into the heart of the business across its global retail channels and supply chains. I give you Mike Barry.
Thank you. Thank you. So here's the grow-ahead retailer up from London to tell you how to do things. Absolutely not. I'm here to have a conversation with you about how to drive change together. There's a lot that we've learned at M&S over the last 9 years. I'd like to share some of that with you. But really, I want to generate a discussion in this room. So I want you starting to think about the questions from the very beginning. Now, I'm going to do 3 things today. I am going to reflect on the big picture. I'm going to talk about why we as Marks & Spencer, a business that's this morning reported some challenging figures, despite that, is putting all its energy and juices into trying to drive huge change. We will not accept that the fact that we've got some short-term commercial difficulties is a reason not to be preparing for a very different future. And I'd also contend that all the challenges that Marks & Spencer faces, you in higher education and further education, you face those as well. So we'll talk about those macro risks to business as usual, why we need to change. And woven into that will be some very exciting opportunities about how a very different approach to education, how a very different approach to retail doing business can actually be much better for everybody, including our shareholders. The second thing I'm going to reference then is, well, what do you do about this? How do you actually practically drive change? And I think that's where we'll have a lot of our conversation in a moment. And the third and final thing I want to do is end with the most important thing of all, which is you. You, the individuals that are taking the education system by the scruff of its neck and saying, we're not satisfied with where we are today. We want a better future for us and for all those that participate in the system today and tomorrow. And again, we'll refer to that. So before I plunge any further in, you all nodded your head and said you'd heard of Plan A. Just to remind us, Plan A launched in 2007, 100 social environmental commitments to make Marks & Spencer a better business. Everything from climate change to packaging to well-being to standards in supply chains to animal welfare to fish sourcing to wood sourcing. There's a reason I've got grey hair, and I'm knocking on a little bit now, but also it's difficult. There are so many spinning plates to change. Now, over the last 9 years, we've delivered 175 commitments, the original 100 plus more, plus more, plus more. But critically, we've driven value for the business. Last year, we saved £160 million for the business. Less waste, less energy, less packaging, less carry bags, all flow back into the business and able to drive the change that we need to deliver. We are one of the most trusted brands, not just in the UK, but globally when it comes to retail. And again, I'll refer to why trust is so very, very important for the future. We've delivered an engaged workforce. Again, our workforce has gone through tremendous change. Today, we announce yet more change. We've significant uplift in our salaries that we're going to be paying at our shop floor, which is fantastic. But there will be changes to the pension provisions that we've given for the old guards, like me, that have been around for quite a while. Change again. But despite all that, we've got one of the most engaged and motivated workforces in British business because we work for a business with a purpose, a passion, a heart and a soul. We've driven more resilient supply chains. Again, I'll give you a few facts and figures in a moment about why we need to do that. But we source from all around the world, and the climatic extremes that some would deny are happening. They're making it harder and harder to do business, to deliver the products and the quality that customers expect from us. And again, we need to prepare for very different disruptive business models in the future. It is not enough just to be selling more clothing and more food in the future. You have to do it in a very different way. So those are the sort of brief credentials as to why I've got probably a right to stand up here and share a few thoughts and observations with you. I also want to remind you why I'm here today, and that's because of you, because of EAUC. We will none of us deliver a better society, a more successful, prosperous planet unless we work together. And again, I'll refer to how we as a business are working together with many of our competitors, but equally, you are working with your competitors. And EAUC is one of those few organisations globally that is truly convening change in the education system. So, let me start with the framing, the big picture. The three macro challenges for all of us in terms of how we do business, how we educate. There's an environmental challenge, there's a social challenge, there's an economic challenge, and I will sort of stop through a few bullets about what those mean for us in the future. Let me start with environment. Very simply, we live in a world that's shifting from 7 billion people to 9 billion. But crucially, we're moving from a world of 1 billion middle-class consumers, us, the Americans, the Japanese, the Australians, to a world of 4 billion middle-class consumers. As rightly, China, India, Brazil, South Africa all start to have a middle class with the aspirations, dreams and hopes that we take for granted. And that's brilliant, but there literally aren't enough fish in the sea to service everybody living as we do. You know the facts and figures, we've got one planet, we need 3 to survive, it simply isn't there for us to do. So we have to find a very different way of consuming. And despite the fact that the global economy at the moment is going through a slightly rocky, well, more than slightly rocky time, you can see the pips starting to ping on our biggest factory being the planet, produces the vast majority of the raw materials, resources that Marks and Spencer and any business uses to do business. Again, some simple facts. I think this week, Lake Mead, the biggest reservoir in the USA, 112 miles long, has dropped to its lowest level since it was opened in 1937. And that's at the heart of a river system, the Colorado, that services the needs of 40 million people. Lowest level. India has had its hottest day ever, and India's used to high temperatures. 123.7 degrees Fahrenheit is excruciating. The World Bank has estimated that it will cost the global economy $2 trillion a year in lost productivity because it's too hot to work. And India's starting to see that. And in India, of course, there is a water challenge. India is just about, almost certainly, to push the button on the $250 billion project to divert water from the relatively wet north to the relatively dry south, with enormous social and environmental implications from doing so. And it has to do that because it's got 330 million people living in water-stressed areas. And yet, as much as India needs to develop, it also faces tough challenges. It needs to improve its energy system. It's planning to do that. 400 gigawatts of new coal-fired power stations are planned. The very power stations that are pumping CO2 into the atmosphere that's causing the overheating. And equally, to cool those coal-fired power stations, India needs to find another 60 trillion litres of water each year to cool those power stations. Everything's connected. Power, food, water, the climate, it's all interlinked. In Brazil, they've seen enormous gains in the last 10 years about moving from a world of deforestation. 25,000 square kilometres of the Amazon was being lost every year at the turn of the century, driven by the food industry. Cattle, beef, soy. That's dropped to 5,000 square kilometres a year. That's bad enough, but it's an improvement. And yet all the political upheaval that's happening in Brazil at this moment in time is leading to people to worry that that is going to be reversed. And the Amazon will again start to be lost. Last Sunday was International Biodiversity Day. Every country takes stock of how it's getting on with protecting biodiversity. And remember, 390,000 plant species on the planet, 20% of them face extinction. Not some loss, not some harm, extinction. And remember, this is the plant system that I depend on for food, for cotton, for everything that we put into our raw materials. Only 15% of countries are anywhere near delivering the biodiversity aims and goals to protect the biodiversity on this planet. A long, long way away from where we need to be. So they're the challenges. And every one of those challenges has implications for Marks and Spencer. We've got a growing business in India. Our Chennai stores were flooded by the worst floods that India's ever seen, and boy, does it see some bad flooding with the monsoon weather. The pressures on the cotton fields because of the lack of water. We get an awful lot of cotton from India. The pressure of water flows dropping in rivers from the dye houses that supply us. There isn't anywhere to send the chemicals that's been cleaned up but still needs to come out into the river. Nowhere to send it. So India, a big problem. Africa, a big problem. And washing and lapping up right on our own shores, up through Europe, the Spanish supply chains we use, the UK supply chains as well. Extreme weather impacting us. But despite all those challenges, there is hope. We've got a world in the UK that this May, about 2 weeks ago, for the first time in 134 years, there was no coal-fired electricity generated in the UK for 4 hours. Just 4 hours. But it was a seminal moment when you started to believe that the low-carbon revolution could actually happen here. Portugal had 107 hours in May of non-stop and 100% renewables. All its electricity came from 100% renewables. Germany's been consistently knocking back 50% of its electricity from renewables. Denmark, 50%. So it can be done. Now, it's not to say naively that it's not without its challenges. Intermittent wind and intermittent solar is difficult to deal with the current grid system we have. But with battery storage, with innovation, with energy efficiency, we can build a new energy system. And the end of all that is saying business is not enough just to be shaving off 1 to 2% of your energy use per year. It's not enough for a university or college to give you that. We need a fundamentally different way of using nature. One that is low carbon, or even carbon positive. One that is circular. Everything we put out into the marketplace ultimately is returned for reuse, recycling. And something that's restorative. We don't just protect the trees and the fish in the sea, we're putting something back and helping them restore. And I can see inklings within Plan A, and also the work of a number of other good businesses around the world, where you can start to see how that might happen. One way to go, but there is a positive direction that we're travelling. So that's the environmental challenge we all face. What are the social? Now, for those of us of a certain age, we can remember, in effect, the post-Second World War settlement, where, in effect, and within reason, every year was slightly better than the last one. You would be better off than your parents, would be better off than their parents, my kids would be better off than me. And yet, if we look now into the crystal ball of the 21st century, can we be sure of that? In a time of migration, a time of housing crisis, times of unemployment, can we really be sure that the future will be better for everybody? And again, I think about the education system that I came through somewhat luckily. I got a crap grade at A-level, sneaked into the university system, pissed it up against the wall for all the time, apart from 12 weeks at the end, and got 2-1 in the end. I could not survive like that today. I literally can't. And yet, as much as kids are working so much harder today, they step into a much more complex, competitive marketplace for a job. So much harder. So jobs is a very interesting one. Clearly, blue-collar manufacturing in the West has been hollowed out. Again, if you look at the rise of Trump in the States now, a lot of what he's playing into is this discontent with where have good old American jobs gone. We've got a situation in the Middle East where there's a rapidly rising young population that literally has no jobs to go into. What does what do young people with no jobs get up to? Mischief. What happens when robots really start to take off? Now, robots have traditionally taken away blue-collar jobs. The robots that assemble the car now run around the workers. Don't believe it in the future. It's white-collar jobs that will be decimated by robotics and artificial intelligence. So we need to prepare for a very different approach to work. Well-being. Again, if you look at the state of the nation, there's still 1 billion people on the planet who eat too little, but over 1 billion that eat too much. And the impact that's having on the welfare system, the health system, is enormous. And the government won't stand for it anymore. Governments around the world, it's not just the UK that's been through austerity, don't have enough money to deal with all the problems that business poses. Whether it's climatic, environmental problems, or social problems caused by sugar, too many calories. So again, sugar tax brought in on sugary drinks in the UK. You'll see it in many different places around the world as well. Tax. Again, the Panama Papers exposed just how much of the taxation system works for the big and not for the little. I think Leona Hemsley, the New York billionaire in the 1980s, talked about taxes are just for little people. And it was a throwaway remark then. I think a lot of people believe that is the case today. However hard you work, you pay tax. Somebody bigger and richer than you doesn't. It's not fair. So all around us, social change is happening. And it's easy for a businessman to step back and say, not my problem, I'm just going to sell into the marketplace and hope for the best. I can't do that. My customer base is changing, it has different expectations, my workforce is changing, the government has different expectations of us and how we pay taxes and pay for externalities. So we need to change socially. And again, having said there's lots of problems out there, there's actually lots of opportunities. For the first time, we've seen a better policy system in 2015. The Sustainable Development Goals, 17 Sustainable Development Goals launched by the UN in New York, for the first time talked about a society that works for all. Now, it's just words on paper at the moment, but you do see a policy system that starts to look in the round, and we as business need to work in the round around that as well. So, hope there as well. But fundamentally, just like we need to be a low-carbon, restorative, circular, environmental business model, we need a business model that's good for people in everything we do. That's committed to equality, committed to fairness, committed to well-being in all we do, and none of us can claim that we're there yet. So that's the social challenge. Now, in this kind of conversation, we'd probably stop there. Environment, social, that's what we deal with as a community. I'm going to put a different spin into the room as well, though, economic. The economic system that we all depend on is fractured as well. It's not working. I think a recent study just came out and said, having surveyed the world's investors about their carbon literacy, 20% of investors are literate on carbon. 30% have a somewhat of an understanding, 50% have no idea. So when Mark Carney, the Governor of the Bank of England, talks about stranded assets, it's a huge risk that trillions of dollars is being invested in the wrong place of the market. Your pensions, my pensions, our savings for the future are going to be left on the sidelines, worthless, because people, the investors, are not sufficiently sophisticated to understand these risks. There's an economic challenge in the sense that growth, global growth now, is not so much in the developed world, here in the West, it's in the developing marketplace. It's good. But that's a very different kind of place to do business. Again, as the big American technology companies have found, that again, at the whim of the Chinese government, you can be locked out of the marketplace, however good, competitive, and however much consumers want to participate with you, out you go. It's a different way of doing business. And then there's the technology revolution. I've mentioned ever so briefly the concept of robotics taking away white-collar jobs. It is but the beginning of a technology revolution that is washing out of the lab and into our world. Artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, biotechnology, driverless cars, drones, design of food based upon your DNA. All of this is coming. And it's not coming in dribs and drabs and bits and pieces, it is fundamentally coming. So again, we must adapt our business model or somebody will disrupt us. And it's very easy to sit there and say disruption, it only ever happens to the weaklings of a marketplace. Woolworths fell out of the retail marketplace, BHS has been in a bit of bother recently. But they're the weaklings. Traditional retailers, of course, they will grow. All these little Primarks emerge to replace the weaklings. I've got another contention that every sector of the next 10 to 20 years will be fundamentally disrupted. Will be fundamentally, relatively good players in every marketplace will be washed away by new entrants because these new technologies allow it. Now, there's a key thing about technology. It can be a tremendous power for good. Tremendous power. If I talked about the environmental social challenges we face, technology can solve a lot of them. Point in the right direction. Pointed in the wrong direction, it can make everything worse. So the only businesses that will prosper in the world where this technology revolution is happening are those that are trusted. To use technology to hold data from people's most intimate parts of their lives, to be trusted to use these technologies that are invisible to the human eye. You can't consciously decide not to work with nanotechnology or biotechnology. You've got to trust that people are using it properly. And in a world where policymakers, regulators, the media, probably there's a degree of scepticism about them and their ability to protect people, it becomes ever more important that business stands up and operates in a responsible way. So that's the outline. That's where I want to start. Environment, social, economic challenge. That faces into my life, it faces into your life. For every way that I've got to think about a different way of selling clothing, about selling food, you need to find a different way of educating, doing research and preparing the leaders of the future. But at heart, I'm a very positive person. As much as we have a challenge as a society and a planet, I believe it's solvable. Again, you look at the emergence of people like Tesla. For 10 years, the car industry, the traditional car industry, has dabbled in the world of electric vehicles. Almost, I've heard people say this, a conspiracy to produce the ugliest, most expensive cars that no one will ever buy. Electric cars will never take off. So Tesla walked into the marketplace with this amazing, beautiful, high-performance sports car that of course you would want to have. And thus the audacity to launch a Model 3 years before anything's built, get $14 billion of upfront commitment from customers to buy this car, 400,000 pre-sold 3 years ahead in the marketplace, to build the factories to actually build the car. It's an incredible entrepreneurial feat that has shaken to the core a car industry that's reeling from the traditional guys being caught with the pants down, fixing results on the emission testing. Now, for every sector I meet a business leader say, what happened to us, Mike? You know, it's not us. I mean the financial sector, you know, you'll always need banks and pound shillings and pence. Rubbish. If you look at Bitcoin and blockchain now, if you look at Kickstarter, all these models that are emerging about new ways that people do peer-to-peer lending, it is a brave bank that sits there and says, not me, government, I'll be fine. Because remember, if there's one challenge for 20th century business, it is its high fixed costs. You only have to lose 10, 15, 20% of your sales to these new upstarts. You're washed away because you're paying for your shops and your factories and your logistics, everything that's sunk asset, you're washed away. The second thing you do is drive integration. I work with a business of 83,000 people. I have a team of 10. I don't buy food, I don't buy clothing, I don't run marketing campaigns, I don't buy lorries, I don't run IT equipment, I don't run shops. The people who do at Marks & Spencer do sustainability as part of their day job. The number one requirement for you as a constituency is not to work ever harder in a little darkened room trying to keep your business organisation honest. It is to get into the rooms of the academics, the vice chancellors and the procurement directors and get them to run the organisation better. That's fundamentally our job. The third thing you do is engage, and this is exactly where Marks & Spencer is today. We've done the integration bit, we're doing the footprint stuff, and that will continue for 10, 15, 20 years. You have to engage. For us, 32 million customers, 83,000 colleagues, because, for the reasons of our client line, everybody needs to understand the need to change, that change is possible, and if we do change, things can be better for everyone. Because we're going to move into a world of new business models, which I'll touch on in a moment. So fundamentally, Marks & Spencer customers, just like most of British society, 10% of them are passionately green, very similar to us. Self-motivated, self-started, looking at the world and thinking, boy, do we need change. The other extreme, 20%, even at Marks & Spencer, who are largely too poor to worry about what's going on beyond their immediate life. Getting by buying benefits or very low wages. Frankly, I respect and appreciate how they have to live their life. It's a luxury to worry about climate change in Indonesia. But the battle lies in between. Two groups of 35%. 35% who are light green, but want to change, want to live a better life, but want it to be easy. But charge me more for M&S, don't require to have a PhD to understand it. Let me participate. And then 35% a little bit further back, a little bit more negative, concerned about the future, but what difference can I make? Even if I stop eating meat or flying or driving or whatever it may be, there'll always be somebody else somewhere doing what I have stopped. What's the point of me sacrificing? These people want to know that if I do one thing, millions of other people will do it as well. And we have to engage and get those people to understand what we're trying to do. Not through a lecture, not like this. It must be through the products and services we provide. And again, I'll touch that in a minute. The fourth thing you do, you develop a new business model. And again, Marks & Spencer one day will have to rent all its clothing. I use rent in the widest sense of inverted commas, but we'll have to have a second life to every piece of clothing we sell. 350 million garments today. Every single item must have a second life and we're finished with it. At the moment, we swap about 3 million garments, we bring back, we give to Oxford, they sell it, raise a couple of million quid for the world in Africa. Brilliant. 3 million items at 350 million. It's a beginning, not an end. But we're experimenting about what it means to get customers to participate in that kind of model. Model not used to. Don't see it on the rest of the high street. Our food business will have to become a wellbeing business. We have the two largest healthy food brands in the UK ourselves, worth hundreds of millions to us. It's a very successful business. But the food business of the future is fundamentally linked in to improving your health personally, not the health of the nation, your health. And again, we must prepare for that. So what are the equivalents for you? What are these radical shifts in education that even if your Vice Chancellor is not willing to bet the farm on today, you as a constituency are at least plotting, planning and thinking through what it means. And the fifth thing you do is you're very humble. You accept that even if, and it's a huge even if, you could create a green Marks & Spencer in a desert called the failed society and economy, you fail with everybody else. You have to work in partnership with others. For Marks and Spencer, that means working with the Consumer Goods Forum that brings together the world's biggest food, drink, and consumer goods companies. So I co-chair its work with Unilever, Jeff Seabright there. I've got to get Pepsi and Coca-Cola to work together. Walmart and Tesco's, Nestle and Unilever. These guys are not bosom buddies. This is North Korea, South Korea in the room, trying to get them to work and accept that there is a bigger story here. And they accept it. They get it. We've come up with resolutions across those 400 members of this group. It's over $3 trillion between us. And we've committed to halve food waste, stop deforestation, shift to low carbon refrigeration, and stop modern day slavery in our supply chain. These are big commitments that competitors are working on. And again, EAUC allows you to come together to say, how do we conquer this great challenge together? So that's how you change a system. Let me just finish by reflecting on you, what you need to do. And again, many of you are doing at least as good a job as me, probably better. But this is what I've learned. The single most important thing that any leader can have is integrity and value. And again, I work for a very good business that doesn't bend the rules, doesn't break the rules. But I see the tensions and pressures that can emerge in a business to make a short-term profit against a long-term gain. You must never, ever, ever bend from your self-belief, your self-value. Without that, you are no leader at all. So that's a step to the obvious. What's the next thing I look for in a leader who works in this space? It's EQ. It's the ability to influence, guide, and to mentor others around you to lead an organisation in a better way. Again, the procurement director, the vice chancellor, the head of admissions, the head of research and academic work in the university. That's what matters. And you have to get alongside them and not lecture them or bully them, but understand how you can deliver for them. So I'm just doing a big piece of work for our CFO, Chief Financial Officer at M&S at the moment. What she wants to do is save a huge amount of money, tens of millions, to put more people in the shop floor at M&S. I will do that to her by delivering an environmental agenda that strips even more waste out of Marks and Spencer. She gets what she wants, cost savings to staff the stores. I get what I want, a less wasteful business. You have to deliver the agenda of the organisation, but also deliver it in a way that delivers the environmental social agenda that you would drive. So EQ is crucial. The third thing that you need to have is an understanding about how your organisation ticks. Now, if I had my career again, I'd go back and run a shop. I'd go run back and run our Dundee store. It's been around a long time. It's 50, 60 years old. Rough, tough. It's hard to work there. You've got to stand up and you learn a lot to keep running that store. I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd been an apple buyer and been out there in the supply chain negotiating hard to get great quality apples at the right price for long-term suppliers. I didn't do that, but anybody who now comes to me and says, Mike, how do you get job in sustainability? Go and do a graduate training program, learn how business ticks. And I say exactly the same to you. Do you absolutely understand how your higher education establishment or further education establishment works, how it ticks, how it makes decisions, how it gets funding, and how your agenda can help further that? You must understand and get under the bonnet of your organisation. The next thing, of course, is intellect, to understand the science of sustainability. But by and large, for my world, it's a skill. I need to move one day, I'm talking about human rights in Bangladesh, to talk about salt reduction in food, to talk about packaging, to talk about fish sourcing, through to African supply chain. You have to move rapidly between multiple different issues and points. Don't try to be an expert in all of them, but make sure that you've got access to it, expert knowledge to support you. The next thing about building partnerships, I've talked about EAUC and its importance, the Consumer Goods Forum for me. Unless you're able to fundamentally work with others who might be competitors, might speak a different language literally from you, unless you can do that, you'll fail. You have to be skilled at building partnerships. And the final thing you need, and again, I think I see that in everybody in here, I need to be able to look you in the eyes and say, are you up for it? Because it's tough. It's blinking difficult to change an embedded system that's been around for 100 years. For all its faults, it's there for a reason. Whether it's education, whether it's business. And you fundamentally have to have drive and energy and keep coming back and keep kicking the door down until you get the right answer. You must have that drive and energy. So that wraps up what I want to say. As fundamentally, we need to move away from this environmental, social and economic crisis. We've got a decision. We're at a crossroads. Cristiana Figueiredo, who led the COP21 climate negotiations that EAUC did such a good job of feeding into on behalf of the global education system, she turned around and spoke to her a couple of months ago, and she said, look, Mike, I'm really proud of what happened in COP21. I can feel that my name was people will remember that I made a difference. But what frustrates me is 10 years too late. The 10 years that we've burned through rebuilding after the shambles of Copenhagen through to Paris is all the time the slack that we have as a society to respond to climate change. It's gone. And every day now that we don't make action is a day too late. And again, we need that drive and that energy. But fundamentally, change comes because a small number of good people are not willing to accept the status quo. They absolutely believe that we should change and absolutely have the courage, whatever inertia surrounds us, whatever apathy, whatever confusion, whatever opposition, downright opposition basically, they walk into that fire and they change it. And that's what I want you to do with the education system. Thank you very much. It's the fun bit. We've got the boring lecture bit done. Let's have a conversation. So if you can put your hands up, tell me who you are, where you're from, give me a question, I'll try and answer it. Who's going to start? Sir down here, come on, get your hands up.
Thanks, Mike. I love that. I can't disagree with anything you said. So far.
But
I was part of a team at Stirling University that measured the sustainability of Scotland's economy for the Scottish Government and SNH in 1992. The Index for Sustainable Economic Welfare, which I'm sure you know, showed that in the States, ISEW, social welfare, declined after the Johnson years and peaked, and you correctly identified when. It's our generation, isn't it? We had the best time, and the Wilson years were the best we had. Comments around that? I'm not going to put you on the spot.
by God, you're a Brady Bunch, aren't you? So let's just reflect on the journey that we've come on. Things have improved. There is a real risk that we as a community just look at the downside of the system we have today. Education, retail, etc. The reason that the retail system of today, consumerism, has emerged is, for a lot of people, it gives them a perceived benefit. They've got more choice, cheaper price point, more convenient to get hold of than they've ever had. Now, we can have a good theoretical discussion about, does it really make you happy to own more stuff? Debate and discuss, we haven't got the hour to do that. But by and large, this system has emerged for a reason. If we're going to unravel the system and get back to a better place, where society was a more balanced, equal society, have to get a healthier society, we have to give people what they want, but in a different way. So what we can't do is sackcloth nationals. We can't say, ban that, stop that, can't have that. And this is why I love the story about Tesla. Tesla is giving people what they want. It's giving them mobility, it's giving them a great car with great performance, it looks fantastic, and we go as much greener in the world. It's one example, but that's the example that keeps me going to say, Mike, don't try and tell people don't eat meat, because you and I know scientifically it's bigger carbon footprint. Let's talk about delicious vegetarian alternatives that might make you want to move away from a meat-based diet, so from meat reduction to a more vegetable-based diet as well. So in everything we do, we need to be thinking customer, or in your case student, or in your case funder of academic research, to say how can we deliver what they want, but in a substantially better way. And the reason I labour that point is the 10% who are green, deep green like us, will always do something different. They're always willing to pay a little bit more for the organic or the fair trade option. I'm a great believer in silver sustainability. What matters is not that we get another Marks and Spencer, another Unilever to become ever better, that we get 1,000 average companies, 1,000 average higher education establishments across the world to do silver sustainability, rather than getting another 5 or 10 to do gold. So I accept the proposition that we do need to think back to where we were at our best, but we need to take a lot of what works today and reinterpret it as well.
Do you want the question now? The question is about Tesla. We both study Elon Musk's economic philosophy very closely. He's in a very difficult position because the traditional way to improve, and all the American management PhDs say the same thing, understand, as you said, the culture of your organisation and take the ideas from the bottom up. He's in a very difficult position. He's built the world's largest footprint factory from scratch. So you can't build improvements on what the shop floor feeds upwards, because the shop floor was plucked from 1,000 organisations across the States. So these hopeful leaps, and I'm absolutely certain he will succeed, and that I will have the first Tesla Model 3 in Scotland.
Good.
You've got a real problem though, or rather you don't. You've got 135 years of Marks and Spencer, and you can build on the past. The big leaps that we have to make now have to be bold, without any track record, without any history, without any baggage.
So again, good point. So let me just use a compare and contrast here. Let's just look at Uber. So Uber, very interesting model in terms of more sustainable society. Using all that spare capacity, those cars that sit in the drive unused, and now got people sitting around in them. Okay. So Uber, interesting. Could be more sustainable. Now you could argue that because they've made it so frictionless to get into a car, you're actually driving more miles. You could argue that Uber as an employer, where you've not got that contract, that pension system that maybe the traditional guard would have given, is a different kind of employer as well. So this is not to say these new business models are not without their faults. It's not to say that these are spectacular failures. I hope desperately they must succeed. But as an entrepreneur, you've taken an enormous leap of faith on the Gigafactory, on the Model 3, and fall flat in its face. But such are the pressures environmentally, socially and economically we've got is that even if it falls flat in its face, which I don't think it will, but even if it did, somebody would step into that vacuum. Just as they did with the dot-com bubble. Dot-com bubble back in 2002-03, everybody had these sexy internet ideas. They were badly thought through business models, flat in the face. 3 or 4 years later, Google, Apple were taking over the world. So change is inevitable in the world. Thank you. Thank you. Next question. I'm going to go, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 over there, but I will take 1, 2 here first.
Hi, it's James William from London South Bank. Just a very quick one. There's a big debate raging at the moment in the university sector around divestment from fossil fuel assets and investments. How do you, or have you had to address the connection that you have with BP as a shop window for your Simply Food concessions, and has that really thrown up some key challenges or criticisms as a result?
Yeah, good question. So the key thing, so for those of you who don't know, Marks and Spencer sells through about 200 BP forecourts now. So making our food much more accessible. The biggest challenge that we have economically is to make great food that people want to buy actually convenient for people to get, rather than having to drive into a town centre that's ever harder to get into. So that the actual economic models work for us. BP as a partner have been great in terms of actually delivering Plan A with us, reducing waste, running the stores efficiently. Does that mean that we have asked them to change their carbon strategy in the future? I don't think we register at this stage. But I think BP understands that they need a different set of partners for the future, and M&S is a key part of that. So at the moment, I'm not part of the BP divestment strategy. I can't force them to change. What I can do is run the bit that's called Marks and Spencer BP in the way that we would expect, which is Plan A. Just the same, we run our M&S Bank is run by HSBC. Just like M&S, just like many other big organisations, not without its faults, not without its problems. The bit that's called M&S Bank, we've run as well as we can with under the Plan A Marks and Spencer banner as well. So again, this is the kind of fraught, complex world that we move into, where we need a different kind of leadership that can deal with a world that's not black and white, that I have to every day get up with things that, why did it have to be that partner and not that one? That's the way it is. But over the next 10 to 20 years, Marks and Spencer will migrate to a place that's fundamentally sustainable with very, very good partners in terms of getting there as well. So it'll never be a neat answer, but it's not one to walk away from either. Question at the back. I'm then going to come across this side. I will come back, don't worry.
Thank you. I'm Georgie Goff from Blue Bristol. Just to sort of capture your experience of graduate skills in relation to sustainability, in the sense that we need to scale up the pace of change across global society. Do you see a skills gap within business, not just in terms of sustainability professionals, but across a range of professions, and their sustainability literacy? And do you see graduates coming through who are increasingly sustainability literate, or is there still work to be done?
Such a good question. The number one gap, not just in business, but politics, in academia, anywhere, is leadership. It's the ability to deal with the complexity. It's the very question that I've just been asked about M&S's relationship with BP. It's not straightforward, it's nuanced, it's grey, what you do. And it's about dealing with that complexity. So we're missing leaders who've got the ability to take this complex world and boil it down into, and this is our response, and this is how we deliver that response. The second thing we're missing is joined up thinking. And I know the theme of a lot of discussion here over the next day or two about cities. And I'm a big believer that cities are the solution when it comes to sustainability. Nation states are too big. There's just too much complexity, too much politics, too large to get your arms around. a London, a Birmingham, Manchester, a Bristol, a Glasgow, you can get your arms around. You can start to do some really significant things. And when I talk to my 15-year-old son about the job he'll be doing in the future, one of the things I talked about is designing a city so it functions, the mobility system works with the energy system, works with the food system. We haven't got graduates of today who are able to look systems-wide and how it all works together. The third thing that we lack is this sense of customer focus. And again, you know, my colleagues in the M&S will probably laugh at me at saying I'm customer focused. They are much more customer focused than me. I deal with stakeholders, policy and science. But even for me, it's utterly about delivering change in the way that the customer wants to participate with. I can come up with the greenest, most perfect option over here, but if nobody buys into the product or service, we'll fail and sustainability will be driven on as well. So again, we don't get enough people who are savvy enough about the marketplace as well. So those are the kind of skills that we're looking for. Now, we've got options. One of the things that Mark Spencer is doing is saying every one of the 3 billion items we sell, slippers, ready meals, bras, knickers, dresses, everyone has to have a Plan A store about 2020. Not to say it's a perfect product, it's not a sustainable product, but we want to ensure that we don't have just a niche fair trade organic range, madam, and everything else. So what we need to ensure is that every commercial category at M&S, there's probably about 60, 70 different commercial groups at M&S that drive, say, men's jumpers, women's dresses, etc. Every single one of them has at least part of their working life thinking Plan A. How many of your academic courses give at least some consideration to what the social, environmental implications of teaching that course are and the kind of skills that those students will need to walk out into the workplace? I suggest not enough. And again, we don't really preach away. We've got parts of M&S that have got products with 3, 4 attributes. We've got some that are struggling to get one. But by and large, the entire business is moving forward to make ourselves more literate in this space. I'm going to come across this side now. There were 3 or 4 questions. Ian, are we okay for time?
Yeah, we're good. Just
Hi, Nick. Simon Kemp, University of Southampton. Love the talk, found it very inspirational. Thank you. Got a question for you, going back to one of your earlier points about trying to encourage customers to take more of a vegetarian-based diet rather than a meat-based diet because of the lower carbon intensity, but not forcing them to do so. One of the highest protein but lowest carbon-based diets is actually insects. I just wondered whether Mark Spencer is going to try to take a position to really promote that line of cuisine.
I should have the question. Any of you who have the misfortune of following me on Twitter would have seen at Christmas I took part in this little charity event organised by the crowd in London. I'm a sustainability expert, get me out of here. And we took part, 150 people in the room, 2 teams of 3, M&S team against the others. And one of the things was to eat a series of insects to bring my point, a healthy, more sustainable diet. My 2 colleagues from M&S whipped out, leaving the old man, the boss, to take it on the chin and munch through it all. What a great experience, but it was deliberately meant not to be deliberate, to be a nice experience at the time. It was whole insects. Of course, insects can become some kind of part of the solution. I think we've got 2 things to do. One is clearly there is a gut factor for lots of people. Again, an informed audience here would nod their head and say, I'll try that. All right, I hope they would. But the average punch of the street, it's a long, long way away from what they're used to, and quite a bit of suspicion. And remember, back in the 1990s, one of the reasons we got into a bit of a pickle as a society, we had a series of food standards. We had cow disease, bottom out, genetically modified food. People were very concerned about the adulteration of food. So anything that takes them radically away from the comfort zone of today is still an ask. So there's that challenge. The second challenge is then just the mechanics of food production, using sufficient quantities of insects produced in a sustainable way to be fed into the system. But just like I'm saying, every sector is going to be disrupted. Insect-based diet will be part of the landscape over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Exactly who lands it in what way will make a lot of money. I don't know at this moment in time, but it's definitely part of the agenda.
And do you think it's something that Mark Spencer could have to promote? Because you've got a particularly powerful platform that can be used. If you are the sustainable members of future business, would you be prepared to try to push that through the agenda?
So good challenge. We are, with our chief executive this morning, we're launching our results to the city. We're the most innovative, and I'll say that proudly now, the most innovative food retailer in the world. We push the boundaries that other people pop in, bring in with affordable price points, different hours, got the copy. Is there anything in the M&S pipeline that's going to deliver that in the next 2, 3, 4 years? No, there isn't. But we are watching very carefully. Not just, I want to answer your question, but I want to use one word. There's a little bit of a leap. It's the well-being. If there's one word that everybody understands across the spectrum of greenness from the 10% to the 7% bill, it's well-being. My personal well-being, that's my children, that's my community, that's my street, that's the wider world. And I think when we talk about well-being of diet, healthier for you, better for you, also better for the planet, we're going to get somewhere. I think just talking about better for the planet, there's a risk that we hit what organic and fair trade, brilliant standards, but there's a point at which they naturally reach that 5% penetration problem. To get beyond that, the word well-being needs to be very, very hard for us. So set your challenge, nothing in the pipeline just yet. I'll take 2 or 3 more this side, and then I will plunge back across this side, and the middle, of course.
Hello, thanks. My name is Christian Unger from the University of Sheffield. And I just have a question with regards to the second life, if you like, of clothing. And particularly I'm interested in cradle-to-cradle production, rather than trying to give it away afterwards, actually making use of what we have here and make some new clothing. Are you looking into this?
Good. So correct question from my alma mater. I'm sure it's much harder to get in than when I crept in the 1980s, and you have to work much harder if you degree than I ever managed. Clothing. So we sell 350 million garments a year, 120,000 tonnes of fibre in them, 60,000 tonnes of which is cotton, so natural fibre. The rest is a mixture of man-made, about 10,000 tonnes of wool. At the moment, we're getting about 1% of that material back through swapping. And we've just relaunched swapping this week with more rewards for people, a new smart card that gives people a rewards point for doing the right thing. That will be in the package. But we don't see a sudden step on without 2 or 3 things happening. What is normalisation in the marketplace? This is my point about partnership. When we launched swapping, we probably thought that's about M&S winning on its own. We want a model that only we can move from. Now, frankly, we're going to have to work with H&M, with Next, with Tesco, with other clothing retailers to drive commonality in the marketplace. Very similar to packaging as well. There's no point every retailer coming up with a sustainable packaging solution that uses fundamentally different plastics in different ways. We all just need to say, here are 3 pure plastics we're going to use. We're all going to back them. We're going to win on the products or prices we put out there, but the packaging is the same material, so it's easy to recycle. So one of the challenges for all of us is how do you create a pure fibre product on the marketplace? As soon as you've got a product that's a mix of man-made and cottons to make fibre, it's harder to deal with again, or certainly take it back to the basic raw material. So we've got to think about multiple different routes, everything from using insulation to reselling as clothing, right through to rental models, right through to repair services. So all these things we're looking at at this moment in time, I'll say no more than that, some of it's quite confidential, but we are looking at some radically different models out there. But also that's coming out of the university network, working with the University of Cambridge and a product called Redress, to actually understand different ways of retailing clothing that always gives it separate. But again, it's that normalisation in the marketplace. If you only ever do that when you pop into the M&S store once every 3 or 4 months and never in another clothing store, it's difficult to break the habit of the life. I'm going to come across this side. I'll come back across in a minute. There was a question just in front of you there, and I'll go.
Hi, I'm Harriet Waters from the University of Oxford. I'm a real believer in learning from mistakes, and we've made plenty of mistakes, and I was really interested in what Plan A's epic fails are that you can share with us.
Have we got an hour? Yeah. So, number one mistake we made was at the very beginning when we launched 100 bold commitments. Brilliant, we won lots of awards, everybody loved it. It was a project management nightmare in the business. We had to trace every single piece of wood used in 1,500 different products. 800 different products contained palm oil. We sold 30 different fish species from 100 different locations. Just getting the traceability, the transparency, the standards put in place, the assurance that actually what you said you do, you actually did, nightmare. And it's only when we brought in our current head of delivery for Plan A, a guy called Adam Elman, that we finally got the grip on what we're doing. So the best friend that any of you need in your higher education, further education establishment is a really good project manager to actually make it work. So that was failure number one. Failure number two was not recognising partnership quick enough. So for the first 5-6 years of Plan A, it's about us winning a lot. We're going to win the awards, we're going to win the accolades, we're going to win the most trusted. And I still want that, but we have to recognise that the heavy lifting has to be done in partnerships. That was the second thing. The third thing is we've never cracked customer engagement. We're working really hard on it now. We've got some ideas as to how to do it. There's lots of reasons for that. A, it's difficult. You pop into M&S for a dress and suddenly you get a lecture on the sustainability of the cotton in it. What to do when you finish with it. And then there's just the prosaic issue of, difficult marketplace. We've got to market our products to actually sell them. Therefore, deals on at this moment in time, rather than talk about long-term stories about where the product came from or what it might stand for. So those, to me, are the three big challenges that we had. Partnership, project management, marketing as well. Again, I'm sure every business will go through the same iteration and version of you. And one of the reasons I stand here now is Doc's met the same mistakes as me as well. And again, EAUC does a brilliant job at allowing you to share what's worked and what hasn't, because it's the long life trying to do this on your own. Question behind, and then I will come back across here.
Right, Carl Lesson from De Montfort University in Leicester. I'm sure everybody here has had difficult conversations they've had to have within their institutions.
Yeah.
Some they've won, perhaps some they haven't won. I just wonder what's the most difficult conversation you've had to have at M&S to get people around to a point of view?
So there's probably two types. I've now survived 3 chief execs. So Sir Stuart Rose invented planning back in 2006. Stuart walked in. And actually this was the hardest conversation. Stuart Rose walked in, summoned me into his office in 2006, and we'd just been named as the most responsible business in Britain for corporate social responsibility by BITC, 23 years, or 4 or 6. Brilliant. I walked into Stuart's room expecting a pat on the back, pay a rise, whatever it was. Done your job, man. He gave me the biggest Anglo-Saxon bollocking you've had in your life. I'll spare you the land. Stuart, very Anglo-Saxon. But it basically said, son, CSR is dead. All you're doing is protecting the backside of the business from Greenpeace or the Guardian finding something bad about it. Marks and Spencer is about aspirational change, positive change for the better. You, son, get out of my office. You've got 3 months to work out what true leadership is. If you won't work it out, don't bother coming back. So, I'm here. But that was the hardest one, because Stuart spotted that, not me. I was quite happy doing CSR. Just making the business ever less bad, that pulse there, a bit more audit there, a bit more checking. And Stuart Rose, he's a man about town, he liked his champagne, he's Bentley and his champagne. Stuart Rose was the one that turned around and said, I've looked at this inconvenient truth, I've seen what old dogs talk about, and frankly, we're not the racers. Put us at the races. So that's challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 is I used to walk into a fellow director's room and say, what are you going to do for Plan A today? And they scowl back at me and say, Mike, I've got a list of 35 things I've got to do. You're 36. The only way to put yourself in the top 5 for each of them is say, walk in humbly and say, this is what I can do for you. CFO, I'm going to help cut your costs. Marketing director, I'm going to help differentiate the brand. Supply chain director, I'm going to make the supply chain more resilient, leaner, quicker, faster. So you have to find a way of working with the grain of the organisation rather than expecting to see things exactly as we do. Things go to rack and ruin. You have to put yourselves in the shoes of the person opposite you and say, how can I help you? And that's my single biggest piece of personal learning in this journey, that humility. I'll come here, and I will come back across the knee and guess.
Yeah. It's too good.
I'm David Corner from the Dublin Institute of Technology. I'm going to give you a ruler of the world question, if that's all right. And I'll give you 20 years' time horizon. My background is marketing, and you're obviously working for an organisation that's profit-driven. That's the world we live in. But how do you reconcile sustainable consumption and profit maximisation?
The elephant in the room, and again, I said in my introductory remarks, we can't current consuming as we are. The current model of trying to flog ever more stuff. By selling more stuff, you make more profit. By making more profit, you get a better share price, better remuneration as a business leader. Those days are rapidly disappearing. How we define value in the future in the way that we always work for communities, for planet, and for shareholders is the $64,000 question. My contention is, and what we always look for as a retailer, is marketplace need. And let me take you back in time to answer your question in the future. In the 1970s, Marks and Spencer invented the concept of ready meals. Since then, we've sold £100 billion worth of ready meals. We replicated and copied across the planet, and it's still a very good business for us. No one in Britain told us we want a ready meal, but we saw a marketplace need that said women were starting to get into the workforce, they didn't have time to cook, clean, and look after the household then. They wanted something convenient to come back to. So we interpreted that marketplace need. It's exactly the same with Steve Jobs and the Apple iPhone. No one said Mr. Jobs can have an Apple iPhone. We recognised that that's what people wanted. So what we've got to do now is recognise there's a marketplace need. People yearn for all the products they have today, the cars, the phones, the clothes, the food, but they want it in a better way. And no one has found a way of delivering it for them in a way that they can see clearly and transparently. That's great for me. That's where I'm going to start from. Great for me. But by the way, it's good for my community, for my planet, it's good for people, everybody who touch that product. The business that can crack that code, that puzzle, will be the one that wins. And I've talked about a business in the future that is low carbon, restorative and circular, that promotes quality, fairness and well-being, that is local, it's transparent and it's social. That is the building blocks of what it looks like. In a way, I throw out the academic question to you guys to help me work out what the hell it is. But I'm very clear. The Teslas of this world are disruptive. The upstarts, if General Motors don't respond to Tesla, General Motors will disappear. And the reason it will disappear is it cannot create value for all. In the way that the shareholders are satisfied, but so is everybody else. I'm going to take one more question.
Do need to finish.
And then we're going to leg it. All right, we've gone through it.
You mentioned earlier about the amount of renewable electricity.
Yeah.
And the cost of that generation is quite high.
Yeah.
Relative cost of power.
Yeah.
So the consequence of that, one of the consequences, is that lots of the production is moved to other parts of the world that has much higher carbon in their energy, the output the same number. So in order to deal with that, I'm assuming that Marks and Spencer will look elsewhere for their supply chains. But in order to deal with that on a global basis, pricing of carbon has to come in. And I'm interested in how Marks and Spencer are facing that.
Yeah.
How is it?
Really good question. So, to start with, and I'm going to have to answer this very briefly. We went to COP21, along with the EAUC, and said, we want a price on carbon. It's the only way that the marketplace can actually, in terms of a level playing field, and when we drive scale with innovation and pace, we need to put a price on carbon. Many of the establishments at COP21 nodded their head and agreed, but it was viewed as one step too far to get the global consensus that taken 195 countries to have an individual country plan to agree to the global carbon price. So everybody backed off from that, but all around the world, different jurisdictions, whether it's nation states or whether it's regions of states, are starting to develop a price on carbon. Now it's good and it's bad. It's bad in the sense it's quite complicated as a global business to actually move from a price of carbon era of zero to $10 a ton, to $50 a ton, back to 10, back to zero, where you actually stand. Some people are starting to put a shadow price on carbon, and that's happening at this moment in time. We're still quite sceptical, mainly because our carbon footprint is built up of so many different things. The cotton field, the energy used in the dye house, the energy used in the food factory, the washing machine in the customer's home, and warming water heating. So we've not decided to push the button yet on an internal price of carbon, might in the future, but we're absolutely lobbying and standing for price of carbon globally. It needs to be done. My final point here is markets work when there's transparency of price. When people are very clear that Marks and Spencer's are charging £20 for a dress, Primark a tenner, H&M 15 quid. You know where you stand. But you don't. Because actually you don't know the externalities that have been baked into that dress. M&S relative, it might be better, it might be worse probably. But you've not actually got a true functioning marketplace. What's going to happen with the world of transparency, the world of digital world, of the iPhone, is you'll start to get more and more transparency about the hidden costs of any business doing business. So the health service is picking up X million because of your sugary drinks. The welfare system is picking up tens of millions because of your relatively low wages. Those things can no longer be. Now, it's not going to emerge in a nice, neat way, or emerge in a complex way, but emerge first. But we have to find ways of having that transparent pricing of the product. Right, I've been told to shut up now, so I'm going to thank you. I really am, because there's brilliant questions. The reason I come here is not to deliver a lecture that I've done a few times, other times. It's to listen to your questions, your challenges, and have a discussion and debate with you. I'm here because EAUC is at the very heart of creating the best higher education, best further education system in the world. But make sure it delivers not just for yourselves, the planet and the people, but for those that you work alongside. So recruit students in, seek research funds, run procurement as well. It has to work for all. Thank you.